This is the DIY Artist Route Podcast, a journey into what it takes to take your work to new people, build your tribe of superfans, and growth farm your project to success in a variety of realms. Hi, I am D. Grant Smith, your guide. Over the past few episodes of this podcast, you have heard me talk with folks like Derek Webb and Andrew Apamov about networking and relationship building, and referencing my book, The DIY Musician's Radio Handbook. This time we are joined by one of the best indie radio promoters in the business, Jesse Barnett. Jesse's company, Right Arm Resource, is one of the absolute best indie music promoters in radio. This is a guy who is living the method that is illustrated in the DIY Musician's Radio Handbook. I wanted to bring Jesse onto the Root podcast to share his perspectives on not only radio marketing, but most importantly, relationship networking. We're going to talk about the book a bit too, because Jesse is one of the folks in this industry that I first sent it to for feedback. You can get your copy of the DIY Musician's Radio Handbook right now at my website, dgrantsmith.com. Click on the link in the right margin with the pic of the book. Okay, there is so much wisdom and practical music promotion help in this episode that I'm really pumped to share with you. You will need either a pen and paper or an open text file on your computer so that you can take notes, because Jesse is going to unload a few truckloads, not just one, but a few truckloads of music marketing wisdom. Indie radio airplay is a big passion of mine, but honestly, I have not experienced a podcast episode of any kind that dives into the stuff that you are going to get in this episode. This is the best podcast piece of advice for radio airplay that is on the entire internet, period. Are you ready to get started? Good. Lace up those shoes and let's hit the route. All right, Jesse Barnett, he is you're the founder of Right Arm Resource, as well as the president and the owner and the main man behind everything, right?
The founder, the owner, the sole employee. The fun of being self-employed in this business.
Ah, yeah. Well, you are the man as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why I wanted to bring Jesse on the DIY Artist Route podcast is because in the things I've been talking about over the past, 8 to 10 months via my website, dgrantsmith.com, and I talk about it a little bit on the appetizer, but it's a very big part of my book, The DIY Musician's Radio Handbook. Jesse is living and breathing this stuff, and he and I have known each other for a while, but we don't work one-on-one together, and we don't have some sort of secret agenda to try to promote something that's not really real. But when I was thinking about people that are actually living and breathing and doing the relationship side of growth marketing, that's what you're doing, and you do that with artists very well. And so, first off, Jesse, I really appreciate you living and breathing this stuff because it's awesome.
Thank you.
You're one of the best music marketers that's out there, speaking from experience, and I enjoy working with you probably more than most of the promotion and marketing firms that do stuff with us because of how relational you are. And that's, again, a reason why I wanted to bring you here. I want to talk about your key philosophies on promotion, on relationship networking, and the effect that radio continues to have on marketing music. So can we start with your philosophy, your key philosophy for promoting and marketing other people?
Well, I think it's different depending on where that artist is and the level of what they're doing. And one of the things that I talk to independent artists about when they want to work a record to AAA, and you'll cover this in your book in a number of spots. You have to look at excuse me. You have to look at, first of all, why you're going to take your record to AAA. What are you trying to radio as a whole, and what are you trying to accomplish with it? And does the expenditure to both the effort and financial to get your record to radio and to push it there, are you going to get a return on that investment? And, so often, so many artists, they see that, oh, well, this artist is blowing up the charts, so I can do that too. And realistically, for independent artists and for most signed artists, even, most of the time that's lightning in a bottle. And so what you really want to look at when you're looking at pushing a record to radio is what are your expectations and how can you, and let's get a realistic viewpoint as to what we're going to try to accomplish in a 6-week period, an 8-week period, a 10-week period, a 3-month period, 6 months, whatever. And the way I look at it is, especially on the independent artist thing, if you think you're going in and going to blow up 99.9 times, 99%, it's not going to happen. But if you look at it from a realistic standpoint and say, okay, my job from working this record to AAA is to go make friends. And if I can go make 25 friends at radio over the course of a 10, 12-week campaign, and then get myself, the availability to get out on the road and do station visits and support and write thank you notes or whatever, and really create and nurture these 25 relationships, then, hey, guess what? I now have a reason to keep doing what I'm doing, to get on the road, to continue to make records, and when I make my next record and get on the road next time, I've already got 25 friends who I've got good relationships with. I can hopefully count on them to be there as long as I'm not going completely outside the box with what I'm doing next time. And then, then the job for the next time is to take those 25 friends and try to get 15 more. And then you've got 40 friends. And all of a sudden, you've got 40 stations that you can count on. They may not be in the markets that you're dreaming of off the bat, but they're a good base to build off of and create some content with and whatever, and to say, okay, well, I've got these friends, and you can move on from there. And then you talk about it in your book with the 25 to 50 stations to really focus in on, I take more of a, that's more when the artist is doing themselves. I mean, as myself, I'm working the AAA format as a whole, so there's about 130 stations that I deal with, but again, it's that same mindset of if you can find a handful of friends to build off of and make friends and make relationships with, then it just gives you the first step in the staircase to continue doing that for, 6 months, a year later, 2 years later, when you have future things going on.
And you talk about having 130 stations you work with now. When you were first starting out, you weren't trying to get out all that stuff to all 130. You had to start from somewhere and build, right?
Well, actually, no. From my end of things, because I started at a label,
okay.
my focus is, at the end of the day, to get on the chart, to get the records on the chart and move them up the chart. It's trying to get, as many stations as possible to play a song for as long as possible, as many times as possible, and to bring that up. And so, if you can get on the chart, you can get other stations go, oh, I see what's going on with that record, then I should pay attention to that and think about it as well. Then it keeps building from there. So as an independent promoter, as a former label guy, realistically, the people that we're answering to, they're looking at chart numbers. When you're working, as an independent artist on your own, the chart number's not as important. It becomes more about the individual markets and where can we do stuff with. But for so much of what I end up doing, the chart ends up being one of those benchmarks that you've got to deal with. And so my 130 stations that I'm dealing with on a regular basis are the 130 stations that make up the commercial and the non-commercial reporters to media-based BDS and FMQB, the three major AAA charts.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
where I get my universe of stations from. I deal and work with stations who don't necessarily report to those, but, so, for example, you're not a reporter to those, but I know that if there's an opportunity, if my artist is in town where you are, I'm going to try to set up an interview and do what I can just because I know they're out there, and, there's a station in Buffalo that, am I following their chart? No, but I do know that my artists tour there, so I'm going to try to set stuff up there wherever I can. So you've got to take the sort of a two-prong approach of airplay from my point of view, looking at airplay and charts, and then also the the bigger picture of, okay, they may not report, but they're out there and they're worth paying attention to, and if there's an opportunity for my artist to do something there, then that's great. Okay, awesome.
You mentioned about having starting with a base and then building from there, and it being about building the base, and that's something that I had a conversation with Seth Godin a couple months ago for this podcast, and he talked about how growth really in this digital space is so much about finding 10 people that can't live without you and investing in those 10 people and then repeating those 10 people again and again and again, and then 3 years later you turn into what is considered an overnight sensation. And
sure.
It's very similar to what you're talking about. I'm curious, from your perspective, in the whole relationship building and networking side of the music industry, what are maybe one or two things that an artist can do at the outset to help create those 10 friendships or 25 friendships?
Well, I mean, from a radio standpoint, it really is about having music that actually works for those radio stations. And that was one of the things, that you mentioned in your book was about, knowing that you actually fit. You talk about the fact that people send you heavy metal stuff for your show, and that's not it's not what you do, so it doesn't help you. I think it's understanding the people that you're reaching out to. If there's a way, if you can follow, if you find that are active on Twitter, you can have a conversation back and forth, but without looking like you're stalking, or Instagram or whatever. These are things that, can go along and comment on, things on the station Facebook page. Again, not the comment of, hey, this is great, I like what you're doing, you should play my record too, but really just sort of the long view approach of just relationship, and let's get stuff, long term together, and understand that I'm another person who gets what I'm talking about, you're a person that gets what you're talking about, and organically there's going to be a relationship formed there and a communication formed there. When it comes to going into the market and doing stuff with radio, it is that, if they'll let you in there and do radio visits, then that's great. If you can come to, a conference, whether it's the non-commercial AAA conference that takes place in Philadelphia, or the AAA conference that takes place in Boulder, Colorado, or even South by, or something like that, there are opportunities to not meet people and push music, but meet people and just take it from a standpoint of learning and ask questions. And that's realistically, that's such a big key, is everybody's going in and telling things, but people are forgetting to ask things. You need to learn. And these people, when you're talking to each other, so much of us who have been doing this promotion for a long time, we speak our own language, and there's shorthand that we use when we're talking, and it's like you forget that there are artists out there who don't know how to do it, and who, don't understand the little pieces that go into the puzzle. I'll give one example of something of somebody, us taking something for granted and the independent artist not really thinking about. I spoke on a panel at South by Southwest like 15 years ago, and it was in front of, there was a lot of us talking sort of inside baseball, and then people started asking questions from the audience, and we realized that, this is a different group. We need to sort of break this down and talk on a more basic level. And when an independent artist asked, me, what's the number one thing I can do to get my CD noticed when I send it to a radio station? I seriously said, and everybody thought I was joking, I seriously said, full jewel case, legible spine. Look, you sit there and you get music all the time. You get stuff sent to you. How many cardboard sleeves do you get? and how often do you know where those are 5 seconds after you open that package? Oh, yeah. Well, there's that, and there's the people that send, there's even people from music firms or music marketing firms, I would say people in your competition, Jesse, that will send a package that has zero contact information for the band. It's just, it's got a package and it's got a CD inside, but there's not a write-up, there's not a one sheet, there's nothing. So if I want to talk about the band at all, or I've got to do all the work to look them up. Sure. And it's, And that on the flip side, though, that is different for every person, because I also, as much as that's great, and you're actually a type of person who wants to do the research, wants to support independent artists, and wants to learn and know more. You're like, going back to, you're the one asking questions. You're an inquisitive person. I do know some programmers who specifically they have interns open the packages, and it is put the CDs in a bin, throw out all the papers that are in it, and just walk away. And they don't want to read anything. They just need the music put right in front of them, and thank you very much. And I tend to, when I'm having artists mail full CDs, I just had a conversation yesterday about, do we need to press a CD Pro single to go along with the full CD? And my answer to that was no. We'll service the single digitally on Play MP, and when we send the full CD, we'll put a sticker, a little Avery label in the corner of the thing that says featuring the single track number going for ads contact Jesse Barnett, right arm resource. Here's my number.
Right.
And so at least stickered onto the jewel case is, at least here's the single, here's some contact information. So if you throw out a piece of paper, that's your choice, but I'm going to keep it so you at least have my stuff on there. And, side note to that for artists who are listening to this and thinking, oh, that's a good idea, remove the plastic wrap before you put the sticker
Yes,
on.
Please, dear God, do that. That's the one thing I do not miss from the 90s is I love CDs, and I still go to stores. I go to record shops all the time and go through and buy CDs. But holy cow, they don't make CD jewel case plastic cutter things anymore like they used to, and it is always, it's like turning into MacGyver trying to figure out how to get into those things.
But it's amazing how so many artists like, oh yeah, I stickered it. Oh yeah, you stickered the shrink wrap. Now, when the person takes off the shrink wrap, tell me where the sticker is.
Right. Yeah.
So it's little things that, when you're looking at trying to just get noticed, and those are the things that sort of like, oh, I didn't necessarily think of that. But, but again, going back to what we were talking about and building relationships, it does go back to one of the things you mentioned in your book, which was knowing that your music is right for where you're sending it in the first place.
Yeah.
And especially in AAA. AAA gets more music sent to it than any other format, specifically because it's got a wider range of what it supports than any other format. But you've got, take the Nielsen indicator panel, of reporters. You've got KRVO in Kalispell, Montana, which is almost, which takes, because it's in Kalispell, takes the job of the AAA, the Hot AC, and the Top 40, basically, in one market. And so they're a very, very pop-leaning station. But they also report to the exact same panel as K-Pig in Watsonville, California, which is basically an Americana station. And they report to make up the same chart. So, am I going to, I think I would say maybe once every 2 years, you probably have a record that somehow gets played on both of those radio stations. But and whereas K-Pig is more open to supporting independent stuff, KRVO is just sitting there looking at charts, and that's fine. That's that's what they're in position to do. And so that's great. They follow what they need to do in their market. I've long thought that AAA, the term adult album alternative, adult rock, adult alternative, is sort of a misnomer, because AAA should really be referred to as adult niche. It's what's missing for adults in each respective market, determined by the people programming that radio station. Right.
Yeah, it is a misnomer for a genre because it can encompass so much stuff.
Yeah. So much of, and over the other thing is with AAA, the sound of what AAA has changed so drastically over the, 20 years that I've been doing this, whereas, we had very singer-songwritery sound at the beginning, classic rock base to it, and then you end up then going for a while really sort of hot AC based, and then and then a few years ago we were talking about the death of alternative radio, and pop was running everything, and now it's sort of the opposite, where alternative radio is, and the music being sent there is kind of driving what's getting on AAA, and AAA starts to get involved when they get a whiff that hot AC wants to get involved.
Yeah.
And they want to take some ownership of it. That being said, we're sort of walking away from the independent artist mindset of it, because when you're talking about those, the alternative chart and, the commercial AAA chart and stuff like that, that's, sort of, as you focused on non-com in your book, it's the last place that most of independent artists are going to be dealing with. So I guess we can take back the non-com end of things. When you're looking at the non-com end of things, there's the major market guys, and you've got that are very still getting to be very singles based, and then you've got some of these small market guys and community radio guys that are very album based still and really want to know the artist as a whole, as opposed to just, is this track going to fly? So it's different for each one, but again, it's so important to really do the research, take a look at what the stations are playing, and know, okay, if I'm an independent artist, I'm not hiring a promoter, doing this myself, then does this? Am I wasting my time reaching out to this radio station?
Right. And so going back to what you mentioned a minute ago about the jargon that we have in this thing, as you're saying non-com, you're talking about non-commercial. You're talking about
sure.
Public and community based radio stations. And in that scope, it's when you work with the promoter, it's a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong here, man, but it's a little. If you're working with a promoter like you that has the connections with the commercial stations, it's easier to make that traction happen when you're pitching your stuff as an independent or DIY musician. But if you are, if you're not and you don't have those connections, then it becomes kind of like. Kind of like waiting in a long line to get somebody's autograph. You don't know if it's going to happen or not.
Yeah, and but I do. I would say it. That happens at non-com too. Depending on the market and the openness of the station as a whole. I've got commercial stations in this country that I work with that are very into new music and being curators for their listeners, and I've got non-coms that are very tight. Mm-hmm. So it really is. When people talk about, this record's only going to be a non-com, well, I listen to that and I can think of 15 commercial radio stations off the top of my head. Then when I'm listening to someone say, well, you know what, I'd rather not just, ghettoize it into that little area, and hey, what about let's reach out to these guys too? Yeah, we're not going to get on the major market commercial guys at any time soon with this independent thing, but there are stations on the commercial side of the panel, there's the commercial side of the dial that can play some of that stuff that works at non-com, and there are also non-com stations that are very commercial sounding, which won't touch the stuff until it moves up the chart. So it really, again, sort of falls back into understanding the radio station. Just because they're on one side of the dial or the other doesn't necessarily say that that's what's going to happen.
But it also helps having that connection and knowing the difference and knowing how to make those headways in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's really taking sort of a micro mindset approach to radio as a whole and doing the research. I mean, you brought up in the book looking at Radio Locator and knowing, okay, well, if in this market, in this region, these are stations here, okay, let me look at those. And and I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's like once a year, sort of take a look back and go, okay, who's doing, in the grand list of outside of those 130 that I know are out there because they're reporters, I keep another, 100 or so on my mailing list just because, when, even though I may not track the airplay, there is, I do believe in the idea for, any stick in a storm to support an artist. If there's a transmitter out there and a radio station, it sort of fits this wheelhouse and is willing to play it, great, they should get a copy of the record. I may not track it, but there have been situations, where people, get emails from people who are just on my mailing list that I don't regularly talk to them saying, hey, thank you for sending me this. This is really great. Are they going to be in the area? Mm. And, you can work out from there. And I'll, sort of reach out and, talk about, okay, maybe we can set something up and whatever. And when it comes to touring and stuff like that, there may be stations that, that don't necessarily report, but I know we're out there when when these stations are going there. I mean, when the artists are going into the area, we could try to set stuff up. But it is, again, it really does boil back down to understanding each individual radio station that you're trying to reach out to and where your place as an independent artist might fit in.
I want to talk a little bit about networking because that's something you're also really good at. And to hear from your perspective that networking is more than just sending an email and adding a contact. What is networking in your definition?
Networking is, that's the start of it, but networking is, building a relationship. And if somebody's supporting you, then you need to maintain that relationship. And one of the things that you brought up in your book was the thank you notes. It's a funny thing. I remember Mike Doty's a great example. Mike, a couple of albums ago, asked me, okay, I want to thank the people who are supporting the project, and I said, okay, well, look, it's been, we're early on right now. Let's get a couple weeks in, and I'll give you a laundry list of people to reach out to, and I did, and I sent them, a list of like 60 people and their addresses and whatever, and lo and behold, within a week, I'm getting notes from programmers going, hey, I just got the sweetest handwritten note from Mike Doty. And it was so really, it was so nice, and it was so personal. And I talked to Mike about it a month later, and I said, it's amazing how much connection that made, and and how much it was. People felt it was really nice that you reached out and did that. And it was funny because his answer back to me, he just sort of looked at me quizzically and said, "I'm on a bus all day. What else am I going to do?" and it was, the mindset of so many artists, it is, is so different from that. And I told him, I said, you have no idea how rare it is to hear a sentence like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just that little extra, hey, I appreciate it. And it's, look, it can be as little as, a tweet of saying, hey, just heard that such and such station at whatever is supporting my new record. Thanks so much. Check them out. And that's great. And it's, it's a little bit of, online notice and, or something on the Facebook page or whatever that, continues the, hey, I see what you're doing. You're supporting me. So I'm going to point out that I appreciate that. And then, following up, a month later and saying, hey, thanks so much for the support. If you, can I send you any CDs to go along with that as giveaways? Is there anything, any reaction to the song or whatever? And just continuing the conversation there. And when you're building, and if songs are working for people, these guys talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if, and there is sort of this little chain of email that goes back and forth. Hey, what's working for you? What are you digging? And I ask programmers that sometime, like, what do you love right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten turned on to stuff, and and I turn them on to stuff. I'm like, oh, I hadn't heard that. It's been sitting on my desk for 3 weeks. What's that about? I'm like, well, I'm not working it personally, but I keep seeing people adding this record. So, and you get in those conversations about what's working for people, and it's, you get to continue, as the music goes around, and you're, people becoming fans of it, they talk.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I have a little cat that I have dubbed my assistant producer, and sometimes she likes to come up and let her voice literally be heard, and it's
no sweat at all.
Very distracting. So I had to ward her off. It's not time for her to work right now.
No worries.
Okay, one more question for you.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to? And this is kind of a twofold question. Artists who want to start doing some bigger promotions, and let me frame this a little bit differently. So, and I appreciate you bringing up my book so much in this conversation. But in the DIY Musicians Radio Handbook, I talk a lot about how if you're going to do things on your own, these are the things that you need to know to do. And
Mm-hmm.
when you get to a place when you want to hire somebody out, you at least know what the framework is that works, and this is what you need to be looking for in the companies that you go with. And that's why I referenced you at the end, because I mean you do this probably better than most other music promotion companies, man. But from your perspective, for artists who are trying to do bigger promotions and bring somebody else into the team, what advice would you have for them?
Well, I think the first advice I'd have is, at that point you're spending serious money, and know why you're spending it. There's so often when it comes to independent artists, the return on the investment won't be there. On an annual level, I turn down more projects than I take on, because it may be a great record, but I can't get it played. And if I can't get it played, why am I asking you to spend thousands of dollars? And to go along with that, is it ready to be played? Is what else is going on with it? And one of the things you mentioned is the fact that radio isn't the only piece of the puzzle. The first question I have when I'm working with independent artists is, A, are you touring? B, what's your press look like? C, do you have any licensing stuff going on? And all of these things are talking points because, if gone are the days of I'm playing the record because it's a good record. There are a lot of good records out there. Yeah. Right now, there are more good records on the desks of radio than they could possibly ever fit into their playlist. And so what is going to make your record stand out among everybody else? Why should they play it? And so, I think more than, looking at which independent promoter, which publicist to work with, it's really looking, is the record at a level where it's is worthy of that stuff and worthy of spending the money, and do you have the time and the wherewithal and the financial resources to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to give whoever you are hiring, whether it's a publicist or whether it's a promotion person, give them enough ammunition to go and get something done for you. Mm-hmm. I think more than who you're going to hire, that's the first question that artists have to ask themselves: is this good enough, and is there a reason enough? And you know what? You got to be realistic, and you have to be honest with yourself as an artist. Great example, had an artist a number of years ago, probably 8 years ago, something like that, when Michael Franti's "Say Hey" was a huge song, and they were an independent artist from a small state in the middle of nowhere, where it is they're really not in a place where they have the opportunity to get out and tour and do whatever, and they were telling me that that radio should support more independent artists. And I told them, absolutely, I'm not going to disagree with you whatsoever. Unfortunately, I live in a world of, my reality, where I deal with, the circumstances that I've got to deal with the radio choosing to really focus in on the stuff that's fine, has a lot of things going on. And and they said, well, I look at this Michael Franti record, and, I got to tell you, my record's 10 times better than that Franti record. And I had to stop them. I said, you know what? Here's where we end. No, it's not. It's not. It really isn't. And if you really think that the record that, radio has been supported, and the amount of time and effort and all the things that are going on to what is the fantastic world that is Michael Franti, and you think that you're just better than that as an independent artist in this small area that hasn't gone out and really done anything, the answer is no. And if you're, and at the end of the day, you're putting blinders on, and you're going to be, no matter who you hire, you're going to be disappointed because your mind already is telling you you're better than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of records, there are a lot of great records out there. So, you're going to get in line, you're going to be in there fighting. But to just stand there and say, I'm better than everybody else, take off your blinders.
Musicians, oh my God, what Jesse is, what he's just spent the past 30 minutes telling us about is some of the best gospel you will ever hear when it comes to, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, man. Like, I just made a note here in my notes that, like, this is the best podcast piece for advice on radio airplay and radio promotion that is on the web, period. And I haven't even started producing this yet. So just in the conversation we're having, you're saying things that are so spot on and so perfect, and from your perspective of doing this with so many different artists, and I hope it's okay for me to mention this, but when I get a package in the mail from you, Jesse, I kind of get a little excited because you only send me good music, and you only send me music that's perfect for my show because you know that. But
well, I spoke at a panel, at Non-Com a few years ago, and was asked the question, do you like everything you work? And my answer back is, I don't have to like it. I have to believe you can play it. I got in a little trouble for that because, the question, well, Jesse doesn't, why would Jesse take on something he doesn't like? My personal tastes have nothing to do with radio. I like a lot of stuff that radio is never going to play.
Mm.
And I also listen to radio, and sometimes the stuff drives me nuts. But that's a personal taste. But that's not a business end of things, and it really goes back to understanding, the radio stations and what they can play and what they can't play, and why something works for one station and not the other. That goes long beyond personal taste. And going back to one thing though, when you said that, when you're looking at spending money and who you're looking at and what you should be looking for, I think the answer to that is honesty.
Mm.
You're not looking for someone to blow smoke up your rear end and tell you how awesome you are. It really is someone who's genuinely going to look and say, okay, what are the realistic expectations for a project like this and the time frame that we're working with, and who can we look at, and where are the options along the tour, and not just, hey, we're going to send this out and, I promise we're going to get this airplay. If someone says, I promise, they're lying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
I promise I'm going to give my best effort, but at the end of the day, I can't promise that people are going to play the thing, because you know what? It may be a situation where I'm sitting here, this past week, where all of a sudden, I've got stations that are right on the cusp of playing something, and then, on a Friday morning, Glassnote Records sends out an e-blast on Play MP that says, "Here's New Mumford and Sons." Well, there went a lot of my shots.
Mm.
They're gone. They're gone, because if a radio station's going to add one record this week, chances are they're going to add the New Mumford and Sons instead of giving a shot over something, an independent thing that we're spinning our wheels on, but trying to find some homes for.
Mm.
So it's just effort and diligence, but keep in mind just like baseball, if you can get 3 out of 10, you're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really is, you also have to understand you're going to hear no a lot. You're going to hear no more often than you're going to hear yes. And if you can take a punch and get back up, then you've got the wherewithal to do it.
Well, I always love boxing metaphors, so good on you for that one. One more thing. You've mentioned this a couple times, and it's something that comes up a lot in conversations that I have with artists about not only radio airplay, but when I talk with artists about investing in themselves and investing in developing their stories so that they can reach more people and grow their audience.
Yep.
The number one question that comes in is, well, when am I gonna see my money returned to me? When am I gonna get my return on investment? Will it happen after the first month or the first 2 or 3 months? And for me, I'm like, look, return on investment for you is not money right now. Return on investment for you is growth. You don't have that. So from your perspective, when you hear people say return on investment, what are you referring to?
Well, look, first of all, I think for a lot of people, it's the artist has to decide why they're doing what they're doing in the first place. Are you doing it to make art, or are you doing it to make money? Because those are two very different reasons to make records. And to be out. I mean, there are artists who just, think they can write a pop song and blow it up and make a ton of money. It's a financial decision for them. Then there are the artists who, they could not imagine doing anything else because it's just, that's who they are. And they have to go make records. They have to go make music. They wake up every morning and write a song, and they go to bed with lyrics in their head. So, I think that's the first thing, is trying to figure out why you're in it, and your expectations to what your return on your investments are going to be drastically different based on those things. But I think when you're looking at spending, $4,000 on independent promotion, for a period of time, is it going to make you alter your landscape enough in terms of opportunities for playing live and record sales and merch things and licensing things. Is it going to alter your life enough to is going to make that $4,000 back, or is that just $4,000 spent?
Right.
And a lot of times it's just spent. But if all you're doing is just taking those 10, 12 weeks or whatever and letting it go by and not trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, it will be money spent. But if you're taking the effort to really create those relationships, figure out, okay, this station's playing it, how can I get to that market? How can I reach out to that radio station? How can I develop the relationship and move forward to count that as one of the chips on my the things on my steps to move up? Then it's an investment and it's worth it. But if all you're doing is putting it out and putting a record out to radio just so you can tell your mom you were on the radio, you've already lost.
Right. Well, it's the same thing that you could do easily on social media. I mean, there's a lot of people that advertise on Facebook and spend, like you were saying, with promotion, spend thousands of dollars, and all it be an effort to try to grow their number base, but they don't actually build anything in the process. And so,
oh sure, every time I get an Instagram follower that when I look at who they are, and it's click here to get 1,000. Okay, block.
Yeah, yeah.
We're done.
Yeah. Well, Jesse, thank you so much again for what you do.
This has been great.
For being a relationship-driven person, and I mean, obviously, I enjoy working with you because of that. I recently had a conversation with Derek Webb from Noise Trade and the solo musician, and he kept referring to in our conversation, keeping rule number 1, which is make great music. And I believe that you keep rule number 1 because you promote great artists. So,
well, I have. It's funny you bring up rules, and I'll leave you with this. I have, there was a friend of mine who started their own business, and I asked them before I started mine, what piece of advice do you have? What am I not thinking of? And they said, come up with a mission statement, and try, make your business decisions revolve around that mission statement. And so I went home and I thought long and hard about it, and I called them up a couple months later. I said, okay, I couldn't come up with a mission statement. Sorry, but I came up with rules. And I have 3 rules for my business. They're printed up on my wall. Rule number 1, don't work records that suck. And it's all well and good, but it's checks coming in, but if it's bad, you're going to get associated with bad. Rule number 2, don't screw over your clients. It goes back to being honest. And rule number 3, and this sort of, goes along with work records suck. Make tomorrow's money, not today's. And I've spent a lot of time turning down records that I just don't think I can succeed with. Because if I take on a project for a client that I'd love to be a repeat client with, and I don't succeed on the first one, I'm never getting hired for them again. But if I follow up and, if we continue to have conversations and find the right record and we succeed, well, there's a long-term relationship that I can continue to work records for this client, and they understand what I do and the types of records I work, and they understand why I'm turning down certain projects and taking others. So, when you talk about having rules, it boils down to honesty in relationships. So I'll leave you with that.
Well, again, gospel truth, man. Sermon on the Mount stuff. So thank you very much, Jesse. I really appreciate you.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Jesse Barnett, president, owner, and all hands on deck at Right Arm Resource, one of the best relationship networking and radio promotion companies for indie musicians. Get more insight into his work, including his client list and his blog, and sign up for his email at rightarmresource.com. Jesse and I talked a lot of indie radio stuff this time, and you got a second perspective insight into why you absolutely need to get the DIY Musician's Radio Handbook. Whether you are doing radio promotion on your own or you're going to hire someone else to do it, the book has invaluable insights into that process. Go get your copy right now at dgrantsmith.com. Just click on the book in the right-hand margin. Okay, this was more than radio promotion. It was a closer look at what the best relationship networking professionals do to grow. You want to know how You can do that with your audience and how you can incorporate social media, music industry influencers, radio, blogs, podcasts, and a whole lot more into that growth. Good. Contact me. Details are at dgrantsmith.com, or you can email me directly, dgrant@dgrantsmith.com. I look forward to hearing from you this week. Our theme song comes from my good friend Timothy Palmer's Half Boy EP. It's a song called Tryin'. You know this to be true. What we love, we give away, and we share with other people. I want you to do your part here on this journey with me. This is what I want you to do. Put these principles into play and experience the transformation, and then go evangelize this. Tell 3 people about what you learned from this podcast episode and send them to iTunes, Spreaker, or Podbean to subscribe, download, and gain a whole wealth of insight on the DIY artist route. Thank you for trekking with me. We will pick up again next time with a new journeyman to teach us more about how to grow as artists and creative entrepreneurs. I'm D. Grant Smith, and I will see you next time right here on the DIY Artist Route.